Hi, I'm James Wan, and we're about to do notes on a scene, and this scene is from my latest film, Aquaman, and let's do it. Let's get into it.
You owe me blood! How'd you find me? Your lady friend has people who like to keep tabs on her.
We follow Arthur and Mera through their journeys through the seven seas. For a moment in the film, we take a reprieve out of the ocean and we come out onto land. And here we're about to go into one of our very big action scenes where they confront Black Manta and these Atlantean commandos that are hunting them down. I love to sort of tie my action together. So if I have characters that are doing things, in one location and something else is happening kind of close by, I like to sort of find ways where my camera allows me to sort of connect them together. And we shot Jason's stunt double here in the foreground, getting blasted onto the roof and tearing up the roof tiles. He comes in this way. Meanwhile, the camera is on a crane, pushes past him. We hook up to another element shoot that is happening in the background here with Mera. And so in this one shot, it allows me to go from one character to the next one using crane and spider cam to hook the two separate locations into one, and then obviously using visual effects to kind of like marry them together. Ultimately, what I'm looking for here is an action scene that might seem somewhat familiar, but it's taken up a notch and to kind of create a fun action set piece that we've never kind of quite seen before, and that is our philosophy from day one, to create things that we haven't quite seen before. So one of the things I wanted to do with this was, I knew I wanted it to be a kind of like a classic foot chase sequence through the rooftop, but I want to kind of mix it up a little bit. So came up with the idea of maybe it's a foot chase sequence that's happening on two levels. For the first part of the chase, I can follow the bad guy. I thought it would be really fun to see our lead character here bust around one wall, find someone who's in the midst of shaving in the shower, and then if we continue, we come out into someone's living room and someone's kitchen. And the concept is we continue with the chase and we do it without a cut and kind of let it just take us all the way to the next moment. And so when we go back to do the second take, we try to roughly sort of keep the look of it, so we keep the way it's busted, like the way the doors and the walls are kind of busted and all kind of raggedy, and we just sort of very simply kind of mock it back up, just so the stunt guy can have something physical for him to hit into, and then what we do then is we use visual effects that come in and complete either the wall or the doorway and make it look like it's brand new. Another thing I do want to talk about is the photography of this shot. The camera itself is hooked to a line because the camera is pretty heavy, and we strip it down to try and make it as compact as possible, but it still has a lot of weight. And the guy who is technically actually shooting the shot right now is a stunt performer as well. So Merc jumps off the balcony and lands, and though the camera follows it very smoothly, the camera operator is also hooked to a harness as well, so that when he jumps down, he lands perfectly with the stunt guy. That's the only way to kind of achieve a shot like this. You don't put your camera operator in there, you put someone who actually understands stunt movement. But that first half of that shot ends with our camera operator basically going out the window of the hallway, and that's really all we have built. We built like the section that we know we need to photograph, and when the camera leaves the hallway out the window, we're pretty much going into like nothing. If you see what's out there, you literally see that it's the parking lot where we shot the sequence in. Obviously then, we use visual effects to then hook us up into the next section of the shot. And so the next section of the shot, we built the rooftop right, that the actor or the stunt performer would run on, and everything is on scaffolding that are really only like 2 or 3 feet off the ground on the parking lot. Don't really want to give it away, but that's how we did it. And then visual effects comes in and adds in the entire environment around it to make it look like it's all the way up there and to sort of complete the world. We're now about to go into the third portion of this shot. So one thing I want to point out here, at some point during this horizontal chase sequence, we did what we call a Texas switch. You have two people kind of like playing the same character, and you literally have them go behind something, and then the other person comes out the other side. And so in this case, we use a very similar approach here, where we had stunt performer number 1. She's running, and then she goes behind that pillar. And once we go behind that pillar, now this is stunt performer number 2 taking over the rest of the run. The reason why we did that is because she was running vertically in this direction, and her character is hooked up to a safety line, and so we cannot unclip her, and so now we need to take the running action. She needs to be running towards us, and so that's why this particular person needs to be encumbered from the safety line so that they can then run forward towards us as we pull back away from her. In this sequence, we have another set built at a different location. Camera starts on the other side through the window of the bell tower and shooting into like a blue screen. And then the camera pulls back and you time it perfectly to Jason's action. And he dives out of the way as the explosion go off. And again, this particular bell tower was built in a parking lot and basically just rigged to blow up. And then of course, this particular guy here is not a real person, it's a digital version of Jason. So the explosion itself is real, and that's really how I like to do most of my stunt sequences. Is I love to try and shoot as much of the actual action in camera as I can, and ultimately using visual effects to help me stitch moments together, stitch elements together to create the one final shot. The more practical you can kind of photograph, the better and more real it looks. And so this shot here, we have a digital double flying to the foreground, and then at some point, right there is when it becomes the real stunt person. So the flying towards the camera is a digital double, but then the rest of this action of this guy clipping the edge of this rooftop is a real stunt performer, and so that way we can get the roof tiles to interact properly when he sort of hit it, and then and he's actually on a wire that on a safety wire. It's spun around him so that when he clips it, he can kind of uncoil in a round way, and so that gives it a really interesting sort of look for when he sort of eventually hits the ground. We put a kind of like a punching bag, basically, right in front of this young little girl here, and then the stunt guy basically runs and body checks that body bag, and then all we did is we just replaced the body bag with this giant digital bell. This shot here was done with on a cable cam or a spider cam, where the camera starts low on the ground, and then the camera sort of zip upwards to then hook up, with the action that's happening above here. And again, coming back to my philosophy of loving to sort of link my characters together with the camera work, it always kind of lets you know where everyone is at, and ultimately just gives you a better sort of geography look of the environment. So meanwhile, yeah, Merc is still down there chasing after her, leading up to this particular shot. This shot took a lot of timing to get right, as you can imagine, because when she jumps and then he comes running out and jump out of the balcony across to the other building as well, took a lot of correct timing. You know, they're on different planes, literally, like she's above there and he's down there, one floor down. And then on top of that, we have the difficulty of trying to time the camera with the action as well. And so we're zipping in as the action's happening, and then the camera has to sort of pan with the action as it pulls away. And so that kind of stuff takes a lot of work to get right, and you know, and you just keep doing take after take till you get it right. And so we have multiple cameras going on at the same time, as you can imagine. And this sequence here literally has our stunt performer with the safety cable around her, sort of looped around her body, so that when she goes flying, she spins through the air like the explosion threw her across the air. It's using the cable around her body, kind of pulling her like a top, if you can imagine, a spinning top, and that's ultimately how we get her to spin through the air. So again, the stunt is real. Her flying through the air is real, and then ultimately what happens here is she lands right on a safety pad. So she doesn't actually fall through the roof in that moment, and then we cut to the next shot. When we're doing action scenes like this, you know, it's so involved, and it's just great to have these actors that are so excited about wanting to do it, and to do it right, and just really kind of get into it. We were very passionate when we made this film, and I think, you know, you see that love and passion, you know, in every frame of this film.